Hello, everyone. You are listening to Scenecraft. From opening shots to long takes and epilogues, we examine our favorite scenes from cinema here on the podcast. I'm Cody, here with my co-hosts,
Mark
and Connor.
You can find Scenecraft on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Scenecraft Podcast for the latest news on the show. Today, we will be discussing a scene from the 2023 film Beau Is Afraid, directed by Ari Aster. We're also so excited to speak with production designer on the film, Fiona Crombie, for her pro take toward the end of the episode. But as usual, let's first kick off with our brief What We've Been Watching segment, Quick Takes.
Speak quickly.
Quickly, thank you.
Quickly, come on. Hurry up, quicker.
Way quicker.
Okay, I'll say it fast.
Okay, what have you guys been watching?
So I recently saw Save Yourselves, which was directed by Alex Huston Fisher and Eleanor Wilson. It was released in 2020, and the logline reads, "A young Brooklyn couple heads to an upstate cabin to unplug from their phones and reconnect with each other. Blissfully unaware of their surroundings, they are left to their own devices as the planet falls under attack." I'm actually not sure how I first heard about Save Yourselves, but at some point I added it to my watch list on Hulu. And I actually finally decided to watch it when I realized that John Paul Reynolds from Search Party and Sunita Mani from Netflix's Glow was in it. So overall, I thought the movie was good, but I wouldn't say it was great. There's an interesting premise here that pairs our central character's desire to disconnect from the digital world, and they're also trying to mend a stagnating relationship. And this is all in the setting of this planet-wide invasion. And I think the problem is that the film feels a bit underwritten. Throughout the film, we're given glimpses into their dysfunctional relationship, and I just don't feel like it ended anywhere particularly satisfying. This movie could be like a fun date experience, but I wouldn't go out of my way to recommend Save Yourselves.
Literally have never heard of this.
Me either.
Yeah, I think it flew under the radar. It was released just before COVID kind of started.
Oh, okay.
So I think it was just kind of, I don't want to say forgotten about, but it just wasn't as highly publicized as it otherwise would have been.
Sure.
I also saw the Super Mario Brothers movie, which was directed by Aaron Horvath and Michael Jelinek, and it was released in 2023. The logline reads, "With help from Princess Peach, Mario gets ready to square off against the all-powerful Bowser to stop his plans from conquering the world." So before I start, I just want to give a quick shout out to friend of the show, Chris, for strongly recommending this one to me. There's apparently a pretty big disparity between audience and critic reactions, and I'd have to say that I fall on the side of the audience on this one.
Okay.
I don't think it's controversial to say that Mario is probably one of the most, if not the most, easily recognizable video game characters ever created.
Yeah.
I grew up playing Mario on Game Boy. I spent so much time playing Mario Kart, Mario Party, and even Mario Tennis on N64 with my sister. I also found myself playing the Mario Kart app on my phone for a majority of last year. I know Connor did as well.
More time than I care to admit.
I tried with you guys exactly one time to do that and realized how terrible I was and gave up immediately.
Yeah, it's pretty addictive. But
It is.
So for the Super Mario Brothers movie, I think the ubiquity of the Mario franchise is both a strength and a weakness to this film. Because on one hand, we know these characters, we're super familiar with them, and there's undeniable excitement in seeing them interact with each other on the screen. And let me tell you, the animation of this film is absolutely gorgeous. The environments are chock full of brightly rendered pieces of eye candy, and there's plenty of Easter eggs to be found. The voice acting is fairly adequate, but I think the highlight is undeniably Jack Black's inspired performance as Bowser.
Nice.
Have you guys seen the Peaches music video?
Oh,
at all?
yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's making the rounds.
So good.
It's great.
Yeah, that's all you have to know. But on the other hand, the IP also plays as a weakness. And I think it's because you have to start from the beginning of this expansive franchise. And as a result, I feel like the film doesn't take many risks narratively. But that being said, I found the ways in which they tied the characters together and the different worlds to be fairly cohesive and most importantly, fun. And I think that bears repeating that the Super Mario Brothers movie is a ton of fun. And I've been seeing that it's connecting with a lot of audiences as a result. Kids won't be lost in the streamlined story, and most adults will enjoy the sweet, sweet taste of nostalgia on this one. So I would recommend seeing the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Mark, we talked a little bit about this before recording, I think sometime last week. So I did go as well. I took your advice, went and saw it, and I was a little more cool on it than you are. I found your description of that lack of narrative risk to be really prominent for me.
Okay.
Sure.
It was a weird thing how in the moment I was just, grinning ear to ear, especially a handful of sequences. I was like, okay, that's cool. That's cool
Yeah.
how they did that. And then on the drive home and sleeping on it, I'm like, it really wasn't anything.
Yeah.
It
Sure.
it's like you said, visually it's pretty spectacular, and I wish you could play the game with that visual fidelity. But
Right.
as a movie, I just felt like it added nothing to the mythos or the story of Mario, and I wanted more of that.
Okay.
I think it could have done so much more than what it did, so it was a lost opportunity for me. But I would still recommend it as well, just especially for kids.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, I think the audience is for everybody, but I think it'll land most for kids. I was in a theater with a bunch of kids, and they were going absolutely crazy during some of the highlights of the movie. So, if you can see it in theaters, it's worthwhile. Connor, what have you been watching recently?
So on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, the two films I had time to watch this week come from Ari Aster's recommendations that he gave on the Criterion Collection
Ooh.
Closet Picks series. So I really tried to put in the work leading up to seeing Beau Is Afraid, and I figured they would give some insight into his filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
The first one that I saw is Secret Sunshine, and it's a Korean movie directed by Lee Chang-dong from 2007. And it's about a woman who moves to the town where her dead husband was born. As she tries to fit in, another tragic event overturns her life. Watching this, I think films like this make me very aware of how broken my brain is to think in terms of Western storytelling. I kept trying to guess and anticipate what was going to happen, basically expecting it to be a thriller or more of a straightforward genre movie. And it's just not that kind of story, like at all. It was almost humbling watching it because it's so different and so complex. Like, I just felt so stupid for trying to analyze it while it was happening. I know you know this, Mark, but Burning by Lee Chang-dong is one of the best films I've seen in the past 10 years.
Completely agree.
And this one is similar in how it stays with you long after you finish watching. So I would recommend checking out Secret Sunshine. I'd be really curious to hear what you guys think of it if either of you give it a shot.
I loved Burning, and so I'm sold. If you recommend it, I'll watch it.
So the next one that I saw is Caché, which translates into Hidden. It's a French movie directed by Michael Haneke from 2005. So the logline for this one is: a married couple is terrorized by a series of surveillance videotapes left on their front porch. Weirdly, my wife and I watched this because it was high up on a list of best French films of all time. I had completely forgotten that Ari had mentioned it during his closet picks, so I happened to watch this one by complete accident, so I managed to see two of his picks. This is another one that has really, really stayed with me since watching. I think I loved this movie. I won't say much, but it uses a device in the film that causes a character to confront past mistakes that come back to haunt him. Also, I can't think of a movie this good that looks this bad. It's filmed on early digital from 2005, so you guys can imagine what I'm talking about. It just looks terrible. I haven't seen any of Haneke's other work, but I know you've recommended Funny Games, Mark, and I'm really curious about the trilogy and his other stuff after seeing this. So I would really recommend Caché, but just know that it deals with disturbing subject matter and complex topics going in.
Yeah, Caché is very cool. The one thing I can really remember, no spoilers, but that shot, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. There's
That
one
was
shot in particular.
Shocking. Yeah. What about for you, Cody? What have you been watching lately?
The first film I saw was Renfield, and that was directed by Chris McKay. That was released mid-April. And the logline for Renfield reads, "After centuries of servitude to Dracula, Renfield is ready to end his codependency and live a life free from the Prince of Darkness." So Nick Cage plays Dracula, and really that is all I needed to know going in. That's what I wanted. So I saw Renfield at the Alamo Draft House, which really, as you know, Connor, from recent trips, really lends itself to having fun with campy films. And in this case, the experience of the movie did a lot of the heavy lifting here. The audience was just having such a great time. And Nick Cage is so fun to watch in this role, and really basically any role with his bizarre idiosyncrasies. And for that alone, I think Renfield shouldn't be overlooked completely. But I cannot help but imagine someone watching this at home, sitting on the couch, and just sitting there silently as the exposition and cringy jokes just go in one ear and out the other. And on a script level, it's fine, but most people aren't going to be feeling that boisterous energy of a late night theater crowd. So I really can't actively recommend Renfield.
Okay.
Wasn't there a lot of pretty gory, over the top kills in it too?
Yeah, and that's catching a little flack because yes, the level of gore is really high, but the action scenes are really poorly shot.
Oh, weird.
And it's just kind of like buckets of like food coloring blood, and it just doesn't really look great. So
weird.
In theory, it's fun. Execution, not amazing. And then the second film I watched is the 2013 film The Grandmaster by Wong Kar-wai. And the logline for this one is, "During the fall of China's last dynasty, legendary kung fu master Yip Man finds his peaceful life interrupted by vengeance." So I went out to my local theater, which is the Roxy here in San Francisco, for the 10-year anniversary screening of The Grandmaster. I really had to do this because I'm just embarrassed by how little I actually know about director Wong Kar-wai. I've seen the famous In the Mood for Love, of course, but really that's it. So I went into this trying to expand my knowledge a little bit. This is about real-life martial artist Yip Man, who was the master of Wing Chun Kung Fu and actually trained Bruce Lee.
Oh, cool.
I had huge expectations for this movie. I've heard it highly recommended by so many people. And that was really my mistake because I was anticipating something completely different and I came away slightly underwhelmed, honestly. The Grandmaster is sort of one part biopic, one part wuxia martial arts, and one part philosophy lesson. And to me, that cocktail just didn't really blend as I wanted. Its structure is so strange. I felt like every single word of dialogue is sort of this generalized platitude. I'm also recognizing here in real time that I think that's my fault and what I'm bringing to it. However, the love story here is very captivating. Wong Kar-wai is incredible with this, and I loved watching Tony Leung and Ziyi Zhang, and also the movie is highly stylized. There's so many frames you could pluck out and hang up on a wall. So despite all of my misgivings during my experience, I would recommend watching The Grandmaster just for its legendary status and starring these legendary characters.
That's great. Wong Kar-wai is really a director I need to explore more of their filmography with. I've just heard such great things, and I'd love to check this one out.
Same, yeah, and that's exactly why I happened to see it on Fandango or something, and I was like, you know what, gotta just do it. And yeah, and the crowd was great, and people clearly love it. I just think I was bringing a very different expectation, and maybe I'll try again in the future. But the fighting is very cool. So there's that. Although lots of edits, lots of cuts, like you were talking about with John Wick, Mark, where you kind of just sit in the fight and watch it unfold and let the choreography speak for itself. This was very cut heavy, and it was a little distracting, honestly.
Okay.
But, you know, that's just me. Well, thanks, guys, for all of those recommendations. And now let's move into our discussion about Ari Aster's Beau Is Afraid, starring Joaquin Phoenix, Nathan Lane, and Amy Ryan, among many others. And as with all of our scene selections, beware of spoilers ahead.
I am so sorry for what your daddy passed down to you. But I wanted a child, the greatest gift of my life.
And the logline for Beau Is Afraid reads, "A mild-mannered but anxiety-ridden man confronts his darkest fears and embarks on an epic odyssey to get home to his mother."
It's such a great logline.
It's such a great logline. So we're going to go into this discussion completely unsullied. We have no clue. For the first time, we have no clue what each of us actually thinks about this film. So it's going to be a very interesting one to cover, I think, and somewhat jumbo-sized episode. And a quick reminder that once we've discussed the scene for today, we'll be joined by production designer on the film, Fiona Crombie, for her pro take. Really excited to talk to her. All right, so first, as always, let's get general thoughts on the film. Go ahead, Mark.
All right, here we go.
Here we go. All right, so let me preface by saying I just find it kind of difficult to remain objective when you're reviewing allegorical filmmaking such as Beau Is Afraid, because it just defies a lot of conventions that we see in traditional narrative storytelling. Everything on display here is a heightened version of reality that often defies logic. This film plays like a surrealist nightmare for a majority of its 3-hour runtime, and while that may scare off a bunch of today's casual moviegoers, I found a lot to unpack and dig into with this. I think there was some thoughtful reflections on the power of guilt and anxiety and how these can be instilled into us by overprotective parenting. Beau is both submissive and spineless, making him a largely two-dimensional protagonist. But in the context of this film and its dreamlike quality, I think it largely works, especially because in most nightmares, at least mine, there's this sense of powerlessness and a lack of control over one situation. And this movie's sectioned into a lot of different chapters, and I think certain ones are maybe a little bit stronger than others, and some of them could have been tightened up. But overall, I had a positive reaction to Beau Is Afraid, but I could see it being a challenging and polarizing experience to a lot of people.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah, that's a great point about like nightmare logic, like dream logic. It really played like that.
All right, Connor, I've been dying. I was saying that before we start recording, that almost as anticipated as the movie itself, I was just dying to hear Connor's experience because he has never seen an Ari Aster film before.
Yeah, so I've never seen Hereditary, I've never seen Midsummer, and intentionally so. I mean, I've like actively avoided those movies, and you guys have seen both, right? Connor was afraid to see this movie. He was scared going in, but you know, I did it. I saw it, and I, been doing the work, reading a lot of articles about it after I watched it, and after sitting with it for almost a week at this point, I liked this movie.
Wow.
It's not a 5-star for me. Probably a bit closer to the middle, but more on the side of like than not like.
That's great.
I wasn't sure immediately after it ended, but I think, you really need to sit with this one. I think I'm mostly impressed that this movie was made at all. It's pretty wild to think that A24 gave Ari Aster $35 million to make this. And I remember Joaquin and Ari Aster saying as much on the A24 podcast. And I love using this term, but you really see every dollar on the screen. We're so used to seeing visual spectacle as a good thing, being wowed by Avatar, by Wes Anderson, just packing the frame with this visual lushness. I got a big kick out of seeing a densely visual world, but done in a feel-bad way. It really puts us in the headspace of that main character, and Fiona Crombie and her production design team just did a fantastic job. I mean, the attention to detail here is what really made the movie for me. Thematically, I think it's a maximalist way of delivering a minimalist message. So the assault on the senses and the visual overload, it's kind of the point if you've seen the movie. And again, after hearing Aster recommend Secret Sunshine and Caché in his closet picks for Criterion, and then watching those in prep for this episode, the concept of a main character basically being tortured for a whole runtime clicked for me. um, I will give Aster a lot of credit, though. What he's made with Beau is super unique because of the blend of dark humor and psychological horror. I could really see this becoming a Big Lebowski-like cult movie with time, where the rewatch value is just super high because it gets better with every watch. And I guess coming off of that, Cody, you really put in the work for this episode and saw the movie twice. So you can tell me if that's true. Does it get better with a rewatch?
I think it does. And it's a little challenging to sit through the 3-hour runtime again when you know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because like you were saying, Mark, some areas are stronger than others, or just kind of more fascinating, more to pick apart. So there was that to kind of contend with. But absolutely, after we rewatch and knowing what to expect, on the other hand, it a lot more reveals itself. You get a lot more of that lush detail, as you were saying, Connor. And I'm looking forward to actually diving into some of that detail in our scene that I didn't pick up on the first time. So
I think this movie kind of invites people to discuss it too, which is why I find our episode today so exciting, because there's so many different ways to interpret every little detail.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And Connor, I'm so happy you said that you're impressed that this movie was made at all, because the very first thing I heard once the end credits hit was someone in the silence of the theater, where you could hear a pin drop, was someone yelling, "I can't believe this movie exists." And for me, that sums up on the broadest level what I thought about the movie. And I absolutely loved Beau Is Afraid.
Oh, wow.
And I'm so happy to say that, because I wasn't sure.
Nice.
Yeah. So this movie to me is like sort of a miracle in a way, because it is weird, like David Lynchian and Charlie Kaufman-esque. But we're talking about A24's largest budget to date, as you said, Connor, $35 million, and an IMAX release.
Right.
Something like that. It's just unprecedented, I think. And it's just so cool to think that Ari Aster earned this bit of a blank check here based on the success of Hereditary and Midsommar. And do not let the giant penis monster in the attic fool you. It's really impressive how well Aster was able to convey the complexity of codependence and conditional love, and the way that many ignorantly approach mental illness. And like in his other films, there's also great examination of family dynamic and legacy. There was a huge risk, I think, that Beau Is Afraid could have been extremely pretentious, and I felt that it was actually very authentic and vulnerable and genuinely hilarious to me in such a grim way. Like, I was actually laughing out loud, strangely.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, the movie is grim. I've heard so many comparisons. It's like Big Fish and Mother had a child, or maybe Synecdoche, New York and Men hybrid.
Ugh.
This isn't imagery you'll soon forget. And I'm not saying, hey, everyone, this movie is for you. But if you like being challenged and made to feel a bit uncomfortable in the occasional theatrical experience, I'd say give Beau Is Afraid a try. It's really bold and ambitious, and even if it skeeves you out completely, it is so respectable for both its thematic and technical immensity.
Awesome. So glad you loved it.
Yeah, I was like shocked how much I came away with it. Like I'm just blown away by this. Like, there's a lot that turns you off in it, but there's just like so much detail. All right. Well, let's dive into our scene selection, which we're going to call the Orphans of the Forest. And this is actually more of a series of scenes that make up a whopping 30-minute chapter of the film, like Mark was talking about. But there is just so much going on here that we wanted to make sure to cover it all. So this will, like I said, this will be a bit of a jumbo-sized scene selection plus our pro take at the end of the episode.
Yeah, and we'll try to break down the major beats in this chapter of the film. But essentially, this is the unofficial Chapter 3 of Beau's Odyssey, all taking place in a forest. Beau happens upon an outdoor traveling theater troupe called the Orphans of the Forest, and he is encouraged to watch a rehearsal of their play, which strangely mirrors elements of Beau's own real-life journey. As the play goes on, this chapter becomes more metaphysical as Beau suddenly finds himself as the hero in the play. We see a ton of really beautiful abstract set design and animation work as Beau's in-play story is told, And the chapter ultimately ends with a startling discovery about his father, as well as the massacre of the theater troupe by Jeeves, the veteran character from the previous chapter. So, needless to say, a lot happens in this chapter of the film.
Ton going on. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Connor. Yeah. So first thing we see is Beau walking into the woods with this young pregnant woman who kind of serves as a guide to this new community that we're seeing. And we see a lot of different signs with proverbs written on them on the different trees as we pass by.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys were able to. This was one of those details that upon a second rewatch, I was kind of able to take a note in the theater and barely read my own scribbled handwriting. But the ones that I caught were nothing to excess, which is a Delphic maxim, which I didn't know any of the Delphic maxims, but essentially I think it's on the Temple of Apollo. There are a lot of these maxims that exist, which are essentially proverbs. And another one that we see on a sign is know thyself. I think that's kind of the clearest one you could see.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final one that I saw, at least, I don't know if you guys caught any more, but there was a follow every rainbow till you find your dream, which I looked up, and it's from The Sound of Music.
Just getting like more and more random.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it seems, I think, to all of us to kind of be, are these kind of random blend of different theatrical expressions that are meant to set the tone and just say, yeah, you're here in this artistic community now. And each individually may say something, but clumped together, it's kind of like corny in a way.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we're introduced to this theater troupe community and they live in the woods in this series of tents and everything seems kind of playful and fun. And then right away we get this hard cut to this like mysterious figure that's lurking in the woods watching Beau. Definitely evoked Lynchian vibes to me. And it's just so funny how the tone of the movie can quickly shift where you're learning about this new world and all of a sudden you see this just unsettling and arresting figure in the background.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys caught this, but that same figure, obviously the gentleman who shows up later, which we'll get to, but he comes out of the woods in the backyard of Roger and
right.
Yeah. He's in their backyard, like back where the Winnebago, Jeeves's Winnebago is. He kind of comes out of the forest. I think that's the same character, right?
Yeah,
I think so.
Was.
Yeah, yep.
Terrifying.
Yeah, creepy. Then from there, our pregnant woman character introduces Beau to the Orphans of the Forest, where they provide solace in his parents dying after he tells them that they're both dead.
This was one of those moments where I had that, Coen Brothers type extremely dark comedy moment where I just cackled out loud in the theater because of the reaction from the troupe. I mean, it's clearly a lost or traumatized group of people finding comfort in community in this art. And the fact that they've all been through something and the way they respond with such empathy, like, oh, I'm so sorry, Beau. I'm sorry, Beau. Like in the background, it's just so funny. And the way that
I think they're all in costume too.
Yeah, they are.
Which is also kind of, it just undercuts the emotional stakes of the scene.
This whole sequence kind of reminded me of Station 11 a little bit.
Totally.
Just kind of that traveling theater troupe. And then I saw on like another article, I think that it also is reminiscent of A Bug's Life, the Pixar film.
Yeah.
because
I
of
that
like
see it.
The traveling circus element and especially like the ladybug character.
Oh, funny.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's a great
true.
pickup.
I think it's interesting that they don't really dwell on giving you too much backstory to this group. They basically say that they're a traveling theater company and they go from forest to forest off the grid and they make their homes out of whatever they can find. And that's all we know. And that's all you really need to know.
And then from there, we're introduced to like a number of different kind of side characters, a couple little cameos. So there's the Ladybug Man, as I just mentioned, who has this like really deep, thunderous voice who is talking to Beau and he like weirdly kisses him on the lips at some point. And then you get the introduction of this character, Yasikov, who is, quote, the man who started all of this, is kind of this like god figure who's up in a tree.
Yeah.
And Yeah. I mean, what you're getting is like Beau touring around this troupe and finding all these like casts of characters that have maybe one line, if a line at all, and seeing how these people live.
Hmm.
And just as the show is beginning, Beau is asked if he would like to join the show, and he's given the option to choose between two costumes, which look like almost comically similar to me. And he ends up choosing one. So just like there's so many great little gags throughout this whole sequence, kind of meant to just make you ask, what am I watching? Like, what's happening here?
Hmm.
Then there's sort of like a really disturbing hard cut to Jeeves just screaming and sprinting through the forest with a tracking device looking for Beau.
Yeah. I think really quickly, an aside, Jeeves is kind of an interesting character to me because I think he's kind of the antithesis of Beau, where Beau's really passive, doesn't have much of a voice, doesn't stick up for himself. Jeeves is like unbridled aggression and masculinity and just a terror and a force that is just unstoppable.
Yeah. Like both very like two-dimensional in their own way.
Yes, exactly.
So the previous mysterious figure is now sitting in the audience staring at Beau. We get a bit of a better shot of him. The show begins, the curtains open up to an autumn setting with two tombstones labeled Mother and Father. The main character walks on stage wearing similar clothes to Beau. And the opening line is, "With my mother and father gone, I have lost my own self, crying as the trees rotate to a winter setting and then spring."
Just to insert like a technical note, and we'll definitely have to ask Fiona about this, but that rotating element of the set where it seems to be practically done, where these trees are rotating between seasons and you're getting this different palette of colors for each of the rotations. And it's just beautifully done. And you can tell that this is all created by a person or people who clearly have a love of theater.
Oh, yeah.
And we're also getting a lot of this other stagecraft, like the tombstones that we talked about sliding out of frame seemingly on this track. And then an axe, again on a track, sliding to the lead character who kind of plucks it off of its mechanism. And if it is all practical, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And if it's not, and it's like CG elements or digital, it looks very good.
Oh, yeah.
So either way,
So fluid. Yeah.
it's so cool looking. But I think this is when it becomes clear that, after that line that you said, Connor, with my mother and father gone, that's when it becomes clear that this stage play is going to mirror parts of Beau's life experience and sort of introduces the generic idea of the hero's journey as this trope that I think the stage play goes on to actually make fun of.
Yeah.
And inserts these like goofy lines to subvert that. It's very funny.
Mm-hmm. And then before we go any further, an angel just pops down and is wearing this paper mache mask and announces, "You grieve well, your parents are honored, and you may now rest forever in peace," and encourages him to start his own life.
So one note here, the angel is played by Maeve Beatty, who is a renowned theater actor in Canada and actually does a ton of voiceover work. She has that really beautiful, somewhat haunting Galadriel, Cate Blanchett vibe. And as we're discovering about the sequence, it could be directly referencing something like a Lord of the Rings voiceover, the hero's story, right? It's all designed to be this sort of vague tale with a few off-putting, hilarious lines inserted into it to kind of make you go, huh?
Yeah, totally. And then a man dressed up as a butterfly, who is also smoking a cigarette, starts turning this wind-up instrument with a rotating handle. And it's sort of this big black box, and then there is this circular rainbow surrounding this black aperture, like an opening. And the camera tracks in towards this object into the aperture. And I don't think we're really meant to know what it is. It's like a mystery object, but it starts to emit a low frequency sound. And this is something we'll definitely have to try to ask Fiona about.
Yeah, one thing I noticed is that after it shows that low frequency sound, it may be this cut or it may be the second time they show it, they then show the audience, and everybody's just kind of like entranced into the play. So I don't know if it's supposed to have like a hypnotic effect or something.
Yeah, seems like it. And just a quick fun fact, the butterfly smoking man is played by Mark Duplass.
No way.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's fun.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, actor, filmmaker Mark Duplass brothers. Such like a fun random cameo.
Yeah, some good cameos in this one.
Yeah, I would never have known that. So then after that, the main character decides that he's going to go and start his own life, but he's actually stopped by a literal chain that's strapped around his ankle. And next, an axe slides in center stage, and the main character takes it and breaks the chains, literally.
So I think our suspicions are confirmed that the play is about Beau, because when we cut to the main character, it literally is now Beau as he walks along a brick road with this very textured construction paper feel, green field and mountains behind him.
Yeah. So this is the shot. Like, this is the point where the famous animation elements of this movie come into play, which has been lauded by critics and people who may not like this movie as much. Yeah, it's incredible that they at least, at the very least, respect this sequence and how beautiful it is. So this is a lot of stop motion animation elements blended with a lot of set design and production design elements. And that stop motion animation was created by the Chilean filmmakers Leon and Cosina, who did La Casa Lobo, The Wolf House, which I don't know if you guys have seen. I haven't, but it looks pretty freaky.
Yeah, I definitely want to check that out. And I'm glad, Mark, that you had mentioned something about like the audience becoming hypnotized, because at this point for me, I felt like I was in a trance, like watching this movie. Like it kind of puts you in this hypnotic state. And there's just so much strangeness unfolding on the screen that you're really swept up in it and just carried along with this play that's happening. And you've got that soft voiceover. This was the part of the film that I really loved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you hit it on the head there. I think the voiceover definitely helps kind of keep the pace, but also you're just in for whatever is going to unfold.
Yeah.
And next up, we get this beautiful side tracking shot of Beau walking along this fantasy brick road, kind of Wizard of Oz like, as we see the seasons change from fall to winter to spring using those rotating tree set pieces again, until he walks through a desert and then eventually into a village that he will call home, according to the voiceover. All throughout the sequence, there's this voiceover, like we've all mentioned, this calming voiceover where she's telling this tale of this hero's journey. And we'll kind of get into little bits and pieces of the VO, but this is kind of where his journey starts.
And then we get a montage of Beau, and he's learning a trade. I think it was meant to show maybe blacksmith. I don't know if you guys agree with that.
Yeah.
And then he starts selling produce that he grew and then building a house with his own hands.
Yeah, you get lines from the narrator, from the angel, saying things like, "You will grow produce with your own hands that you will have the joy of eating, and you will build your own house." And it's just kind of this amazing, generic, like funny language.
Yeah, kind of like a timeless story that could be told through all of history.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Then we see a shot of Beau eating food next to a window where we see a frog, rooster, deer, and Tony, Roger and Grace's child's cheerleader friend, recording Beau with her cell phone.
What did you guys think of that? I had no idea what to make of that.
Okay, I think the purpose of that was, instead of him freaking out with her filming him, he instead just waves hi. So he doesn't have paranoia. He's just kind of going with it, and he doesn't seem as frazzled by this. Whereas earlier in the film, when he's locked in that car and they start doing that, he's, deeply uncomfortable and anxious.
Right.
Do you think there's any chance at all that when he's in the car with Tony and Tony's cheerleader friend, and they forcibly make him smoke a joint, which we don't know really what's in it, they say that there are 3 things in it, but they're not specific about what's actually in it. He begins to hallucinate. Do you think there is any chance that what we're seeing in the play is like as a result of that drug trip, and that's why we're seeing the cheerleader like peeking her way into the scene?
It's definitely possible.
I mean, anything is with this with this
Yeah.
movie, right?
No, that's an interesting take too.
I think this confirms one of my theories that I wanted to mention at some point. So she's a female character, and I think I can definitively say that every female that's basically featured in this theater production wears a paper mache mask.
It seemed to be that most people in the play, it's in kind of the fantasy world of the play, in the animated fantasy, are wearing the paper mache masks. Because I know a couple of men are too, but the only ones
That's
that
true.
are not are his family members.
Mhm.
You know what? Just after saying this, I remembered they show his wife, and his wife has a normal face. So I think you're right, Cody. I think it's more family than it is gendered.
Yeah. And we get that great VO line where she says, "Sometimes your wife looks like a man," like out of nowhere.
It's so weird.
And then there's this amazing, it's like a hard cut to Joaquin sort of hugging her, and he has this like goofy smirk on his face that you have not seen throughout the rest of the movie or like in any other film he's been in.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. And obviously his kids are born in the fantasy world of the play. He gets a wife, he has kids, and we get that other line, she will become pregnant because you have sex with her.
Yeah, it's like so oddly instructional. And then they follow it up with a historic storm will sweep through your village, destroying their home and separating Beau from his children. So we get this like stormy, dark flood imagery that starts to change the scene of the play. So Beau looks for his family for days, weeks, months. I mean, it seems like a very long time, and he's unable to find them. He's unable to find work because no one will speak your language, and he's treated like a criminal. He comes across there's a couple of things that happen, but he comes across a village racked by a plague when a deranged man accuses Beau of burning down his home and replacing his children's feet with their hands. What
What is that?
I have no idea.
I have no. I was hoping you guys could decipher that. 'Cause
I think it's just part of that like intentional subversion of like the journey we all take through life, and Aster's just trying to mix it up with like the most bizarre imagery and language that he can to like throw that off in some way.
Yeah.
Beau is then escorted into the prison of this like plague-ridden fantasy town, and as he's walking up to the prison, we see this kind of cool rotating prison wall cinder block set that seems like, again, another practical effect hybrid with this animated style. And by the way, the members of this town, again, are wearing these paper mache blank neutral masks. But through animation, we're getting these graphic squiggles that replace their face, and it just makes it like super disturbing.
It's just incredibly eerie and unsettling.
So Beau breaks through another set of chain imagery again, and an attack dog is sent to find him, which I think parallels the story of Jeeves, kind of following and tracking him down through the forest.
Yeah.
He continues his adventures, distinguishing birds by their call, knowing every tree and plant by its name, abandoning all comforts and conditioning your mind to new ways of seeing. So the VO continues on. There was one mention of how Beau continues to look for his family until his life shrinks and fades into the dream of a ghost, which is almost like a question of if they ever existed in the first place.
And then we see Beau as an old man, and he starts laying down and just starts crying.
Yeah, I mean, this section where, and just to step back for a second, for most of this animation, this animated sequence where Joaquin Phoenix as Beau is actually, we're seeing him, real live person.
Right.
And it's more the backdrop and elements around him that's animated. And for most of the time, we're seeing him as a, 40 something. And like Mark said, it's meant to imply he's searching for so long for his family that's been swept away by this flood that he's now an old man, and you actually see Joaquin with a really long white beard, and it's, on one hand, the makeup and everything is done really well, and it's like so believable as him as this like grimy old man. But at the other side, I think it's also meant to be like slightly comedic too.
Yeah, right? Because it looks like he's like 95 years old. And then
He's
his
like
children are
extremely
It's
like
pretty over the top.
young
Yeah.
20s, you know? Yeah. There are a couple things that happen right after this. He kind of comes to in a real life version of his village where he spends his last dollar on a special play instead of food, despite being really hungry. And at this point, it really starts to become pretty meta. You're seeing almost like a play within a play.
Yeah,
So,
exactly, because he's still in the fantasy version of the play,
right.
but everything appears much more realistic as it does in the real world, where like 40-year-old Beau is actually watching the play.
Right. We actually cut back to Beau sitting in the audience, you know, like you just mentioned, Cody, where he's watching a mother figure and another one of those really creepy paper mache masks. They seem to get even creepier as the play goes on. And now she's reading a story to his 3 children up on the stage.
And then old Beau, bearded Beau, notices that the details of the plot that are being shown on stage are impossibly similar to those of his own life. And he stands up to scream and announce in this incredible moment, "This is my story!"
Yeah.
And that recognition that he stumbled upon this play within a play within a play, Inception style, and that they're telling his story excites him to the point where he yells this out, "This is my story." And that kind of gets the attention of his 3 sons on stage, who are now like grown men. Right? They're, you know, they're probably like late teens or early adulthood. One of them played by Michael Gandolfini.
Oh, no way.
Oh, wow.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Huh. We get this really long take of this elderly Beau hugging and crying while reconnecting with his sons. And it was just kind of melodramatic, but also weirdly earned at the same time.
Yeah.
And they respond that they were raised as orphans because Beau asks about where their mother had went.
Like you guys are saying, I think Joaquin Phoenix needs to ride the very fine line between like actually touching a family reunion and being emotional, crying, and being really funny and melodramatic.
Yeah.
So he's doing this blubbering thing where he's like, "My boys, my boys," and he's like hugging each of them. And it's, I was like laughing out loud.
Oh,
in the
me too.
theater.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure like if I was supposed to be.
It's just so
I
ridiculous.
found-
you know, it's like we
It's
just
so
met these
ridiculous.
characters. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've been
that's true.
searching for you for so long.
Right,
Like the-
right.
And Mark, going back to what you were saying, as Beau is hugging and crying, reconnecting with his now adult sons who he lost, they respond that they were raised as orphans when Beau asks where their mother is. And then that conversation evolves into his kids start questioning, like, you know, do we have any other family? He mentions that they have a grandmother who we're meant to assume is Mona.
Mm-hmm.
And then goes into like, that's the only other family. And that is when we cut to a flashback, right? Like hard cut to a flashback. Totally out of the world of the fantasy play, totally different scene.
And that's where we see Beau's mother, Mona, and she's recounting a story to young Beau. And we get this creepy lantern that has this multicolor spinning effect. And it casts a lot of shadows. Basically, we're inside Beau's childhood bedroom, and the lights are off, and everything is lit just by this lantern.
And yeah, just narrowing in on that lantern effect. I think in a lot of scenarios, in the room of an actual child would be this comforting, beautiful light cast on the walls that would put them to sleep, you know, calm them, is turned into this terrifying silhouette effect on Mona's face, which is casting these different colors of light across her eyes, and the rest of her face is in shadow as she's telling this very brutal, graphic story to her child. So it kind of turns it into this creepy, terrifying effect.
Right.
So at this point, this is where Mona reveals that Beau's father died on his wedding night at the very instant that Beau was conceived. And she goes into some pretty graphic detail.
Yeah, and Mark, so throughout the whole movie, for those who have seen the movie, we are introduced to this idea that Beau has some sort of genetic defect or illness of some kind that could kill him at any stage, and this is part of his anxiety, right? But we never really know specifically what it is. At a point in the film where we're seeing them, Beau and his mother, on a cruise ship when he was a young boy.
Yeah.
He has this love interest and tells her at some point, "I'm a virgin. I can't have sex. It's a genetic thing." And it's never really explained beyond that. So this is the first time in the movie that we're actually learning what that defect is. And Mark, as you were saying, the way that
she describes what happened
yeah,
is like wildly inappropriate for telling your kid. Not only like, the way it happened, but also just the gruesome and gory details of how much pain he was in when he died. Like,
right.
I think that is meant to be a way to assert control over Beau and his masculinity.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is to tell him like how painfully he will die if Beau has sex.
Well, also, it's a way for her to control him and prevent him from being taken away by a girl, right?
Yeah.
So that way he's always with his mother because he won't have any interest in women.
Yeah.
I also just want to say that Zoe Lister-Jones, such an amazing voice through this whole thing. Such a great balance of being creepy, but also very soothing.
So after this, we wrap up this portion of the scene when Mona states that despite this horrible trauma of her newlywed husband dying the night of their wedding, it also led to the greatest gift of her life, which was Beau.
We cut back to old Beau being questioned by his sons how it would be possible that they were conceived if Beau claims that he's a virgin. It's just like this really funny, confused moment where I think it's dawning on Beau.
Yeah, it's
Right.
exactly. And as it's dawning on him, like the camera's kind of tracking in, lingering on his clear confusion on his face. And that is when we cut out of the fantasy meta play and back to 40-something Beau in the woods with the Orphans of the Forest watching the play that he was just in. I don't know if any of this
It's so hard to explain, but he's no longer the main character on stage anymore.
Right. Now we're seeing the actor that was playing the lead at the beginning of the play when Beau is first sitting down in the auditorium. So Beau is no longer the hero of this story. This was just like a metaphysical journey for him.
And then from there, Beau announces that he feels sick, and the pregnant woman offers him a special drink, which helps him in some way. And then we see Beau give her the white statue that he had been carrying around that was originally meant for his mother. So it feels like a very symbolic moment. He's giving this to this pregnant woman.
And another slight that I think Mona knows about later.
Right.
You know, somehow through her espionage and all of her resources, it's like, you gave the statue that you got for me to this random woman in the woods, and the statue actually matches the massive statue in front of Mona's house.
Yeah.
It's very similar.
Oh, yeah.
It's true. It's like exactly the same. So
do you think that's a CG creation, Connor, of that giant statue? I couldn't really tell. But
I couldn't tell either. If it was really well done. But it makes you wonder, was that statue there first, and then he saw this
and it reminded him,
later in his life and bought it for his mom, or did she like build this statue as a way to like guilt trip him or something?
Which you would not put it past her. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
So after this, we see the mysterious figure at the beginning of the scene is now sitting next to Beau. And I want to make a quick aside that when we first see the figure, he's like almost just a blurry blob in the background, right?
Mhm.
And then the next time we see him, he's like a little bit closer. And then the third time we see him, he's sitting in the audience near Beau. And then this final time we see him, we actually get him in focus and we can make out details of his face a little bit clearer. And it's at this point the figure reveals himself to be a worker for Beau's father. And he states that his father is still alive. And Beau asks the natural question and says, is this man that's talking to him, this mysterious figure, actually his father?
So, what do you guys think about this? Because, on one hand, if you remember towards the beginning of the film, when Beau gets home to his horrible, horrible apartment, at a certain point, he like looks up to an image of his supposedly of his dad that's hanging on the wall, and he says
Yeah.
like hi dad or love you dad or something, and the image is of a man like a slender man. I think it's a black and white photo, and using like a long exposure on the camera that the photo was taken with, his head is kind of like in this slow
Right.
shutter
Blurry.
That's right.
Yeah.
blur so that you can't tell who the man is, but he's kind of swinging a hammer like he's doing a construction project. And I could feasibly see this guy actually being his dad. He has like a similar build,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I don't know like what that would add or subtract to the film if this was actually his dad versus lying and saying he was like a worker for Beau's dad.
I noticed that they looked similar too. I figured it was
Yeah.
the person from the photograph.
So it could have been either like a manufactured father figure that
True.
Mona like gave to Beau to hang
Yeah.
up in his apartment so that he has this like glimmer of hope, essentially,
Right.
instead of a giant penis in an attic.
Relax, everybody. It's in the movie if you haven't seen it.
So yeah, the open question, open for analysis. Is that his father or not?
Of course, right after that question gets asked, the tracker on Beau's ankle begins to chime, and the lead actor on stage yells, "Hello, fair stranger," and he's hit with a throwing knife in like really quick fashion, and everyone on stage just panics in horror. A lot of chaos starts to ensue, and the butterfly man grabs a gun out of the rainbow wind-up machine and then runs away. So it's like, well, what was that thing, that machine?
Yeah, never to be seen again.
Yeah.
Doesn't like you think that's going to come back into play? Like the guy comes
No.
around the corner like with the gun and kills Jeeves, but no, he just runs.
Yeah.
runs away.
Runs away. And the mysterious father figure shouts to Beau to run, and then he's immediately killed by a giant explosion, just like so surprising. And Jeeves appears and just begins gunning down members of the troop as Beau runs away.
Mm-hmm.
And you're seeing these like bullet hits on trees
Right.
and just general gunfire. And then finally, you cut back to Jeeves with his gun, and then a troop member actually hits him in the back of the head with like a stool or a chair. Jeeves falls over and then accidentally starts riddling himself with bullets like in the chest from his
So
own
gross.
gun.
Yeah.
As it's happening, he's pulling out his cell phone. It's the tracker, how he's
Right.
been tracking Beau, and then he hits this button that seemingly detonates the ankle tracker on Beau and shocks him and then incapacitates him. Beau falls to the forest floor. End of scene.
Yeah, and I think that each chapter of the movie kind of starts and ends with Beau getting like knocked out in some capacity, like kind of going into like a dream like state or a bit of like unconsciousness, and then the next chapter starts up.
Yeah, to the point where and you never want to do the way out of like everything was all a dream,
Yeah.
but at the same time, you're right. It's starting and ending the same way. For all we know, this could have just been some like
Right.
hallucinogenic sequence where we don't really know like if any of this actually happened. This whole theatrical scene was a way of self-actualizing.
Do you guys have any take on why, in his own fantasy, why would it end in this disastrous flood separating him from his children if it was this idyllic version of his life?
I guess my read was like he craves like a journey. and he just has never had one. Like
Yeah.
he lives such like a controlled life and like an unexciting life that this is the adventure that he imagines for himself. Like obviously there's a struggle and you'll have a family, and it's just so not fully formed in his head. And I think that literally we're seeing that play out in like a childlike play.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I feel like the color construction paper feel and aesthetic of the production of this portion of the movie has this kind of childlike quality to it. And I think that is a reflection of Beau's stunted mentality from the years of coddling from his mother.
Yeah.
Guys, what about the technical perspective of the film? Anything to target there and discuss?
I would say, having seen Hereditary and Midsommar, there are a couple Ari Asterisms. I don't know what else to call them, director trademarks. But I noticed that he tends to use a lot of lateral movement when we're first introduced to an environment. It's almost kind of like a POV moving around to show the expansiveness of the set and whatever surroundings that we're just getting familiar with.
Yeah. And I think I can speak for Connor and myself when I say that the sheer density and specificity of the production design, the set design, costume, makeup, not only to make up this scene in particular, but the movie as a whole just makes it feel so grand and ambitious. And everything from Beau's apartment and like the detail of like the smudges on the wall and like what's in that blender and all of the line of products created in world to basically surround Beau.
Oh yeah.
The art team and anyone on the technical level on the film should like really be getting a lot of credit in making this come to life in this nightmarish way. It's just also brilliantly done. And I think that was part of the love for the film after the first time, but unpacking it the second time was plucking out all of those details.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that does it for the actual physical breakdown of the scene. And I hope everyone was able to bear with us as we broke that down, because it's visually, once you're seeing it play out, it tracks. But actually talking through it, I think we're all realizing now how complex it is. And that's why this is such a beautiful visual scene, because it is meant to be watched and viewed. And so with that said, do you guys have any other thoughts or comments about the scene or the movie as a whole?
Yeah, I think the scene or section of the movie is just critical for understanding the piece as a whole, because we're essentially given a theater production dream sequence of what Beau's life could have been if he was free from his mother's oppression. And so by understanding the scene, we kind of understand what he wanted and, why he felt so unfulfilled.
Yeah. And as far as like final thoughts on the film, there's just so much I'll be continuing to think about with this movie. Really, really glad it exists, because it's such an anomaly.
Yeah, it really is. And yeah, just the idea that this is out in the world and a studio of any kind took this big of a risk on something that, no, it doesn't appeal to everybody. It's not, it doesn't appeal to the mass moviegoer in a time where the theatrical experience is more rare for most people. And it was a huge but calculated risk to give Ari Aster this platform to tell this Odyssey journey that he's been working on for like a decade, or decades plural. I'm just so excited to see what Ari Aster does next.
Same here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you guys. And now that we've broken down the Children of the Forest chapter in detail, we would love to welcome on our guest, Fiona Crombie, the production designer on the film, for her pro take.
Amateur or professional?
Professional.
Hi, Fiona. Thank you so much for joining us here on Scenecraft to talk about Beau Is Afraid.
My pleasure. Hello.
So, as this is the pro take section of the podcast, we would love to do just a brief introduction on the craft of the production designer. Would you mind telling us a little bit about how you approach design in general and then some of your crucial collaborations on a project?
I mean, my approach to design is it's very instinctive about a script. So I'll receive a script and I'll read it, and I'll always immediately have some kind of impulses about how I think it should look. And I kind of can't help myself. And then that will lead into me like researching and like finding references and building up kind of, I call it like a visual spine for the film, and how I think that the physical spaces should look, and what the cars are or what they're eating or the signage or whatever, all the detailing I build up through an initial process. And probably the closest, I mean, other than working closely with a director, obviously, and a cinematographer, in my team, my key people are supervising art director, who is, very involved in, art department, construction, that kind of world. And then the set decorator, who's looking at all the furnishings and the kind of character detail. So they're my kind of two key people. And then, I mean, I tend to be quite involved. I love being working on everything. So like on Beau, obviously super close to the graphics team, the painters, just all the different people are my people. So, we all are on the same, make sure we're on the same page. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, so that actually leads into my question to start. So if we take a wider look at this film as a whole, there's a lot of density to the design. We see sets ranging from the grimy Erectus Ejectus adult shop to a teenager's room filled with K-pop posters. What level of detail were you getting at a script level for these sets? And what was your process in researching and walking this line between comedy and horror?
I think there was a percentage. I mean, I think Erectus Ejectus was in the script. I mean, I can't really remember, or if it kind of came as a little surprise from Ari at some point, after I'd already signed my contract. But what was really great about the process for me on Beau was like, it was the beginning of 2021. And so it was still quite COVID-y, And so I was in London, Ari was in New York. He was sort of locked down from memory. And we just spent months actually, from like January through to April, speaking once or twice a week on Zoom. I would be prepping images and packages. And so I think that through that process of just conversation, it became clear that we were going to make a really dense world. I think all of his films have a lot of, he builds a lot of that into his films generally. Like, he really wants people to watch it more than once and to find meaning and to find the little gifts that he hands to his viewer. What I really like about Ari's work is he treats his audience with respect. Like, he expects you to find things. Like, it was clear from our first conversations that was going to be the plan. And then, we just started building on it and working with our in-house graphic designer, but also we worked with a friend of Ari's who's a graphic designer who has Ari's humor. So like there was just this constant back and forth. Is this too much? It's never too much. Like, all this kind of stuff. It just kept going, building and building and building.
Yeah, I love that. I would love to get a bit more specific on that. So as a graphic designer myself, I loved all of the customized in-world branding that you and the team built. Can you tell us about the MW Industries logo and that perfectly safe line of products? Do you and your team pitch these to Ari, or how does that work?
Well, there were some that were in the script, like the water. There were a few, bits and from memory, there are a few that were in the script that were sort of plot driven, but then the sort of things around that, like, for example, the perfectly safe. I did pitch a lot of that to Ari because we sort of had to find a way into what is Mona's industry? Like, what is she creating? Like, how is she this, entrepreneur? That for me was kind of interesting, this idea that you could be really diverse in what you're developing. And then I thought what was interesting was that if it was all sort of focused on Beau's periods of development, so, there might be teething gel or there might be formula and then as he gets older and he's got, allergies, then she's going to do like she's got people just kind of going, how can I soften this world for him? How can I shepherd him through? And, so now we've got acne cream and now we've got shaving foam and now he's got antidepressants.
Yeah.
And now he's got a security, like it just could go on. And so that's what we actually did, was like we looked at what are the kind of phases from, being born through to adulthood, and how could she intervene? And so that was sort of the link, that we played with.
Wow, that's incredible. I would never have thought that the products themselves would align with his upbringing, and just a way for Mona to insert more control over him, because that speaks to character on multiple levels. That's fantastic. That's so great. And then narrowing in more on the Orphans of the Forest sequence, can you tell us a little bit about some of the challenges while designing sets, shooting in the woods of Montreal, and did your experience at the Sydney Theatre Company bring a lot of inspiration to this sequence?
Yes, I mean my background in theatre absolutely helped me, because it's my natural home. Like I totally know how to build things, and that little sequence I made the model here in London before I'd even gotten on a plane. Like I knew that we were going to do the spinning trees. I had a kind of a way that I thought it should work. So it was all done in real time, practically. Like it was all like, we had a bunch of people on the side of stage, like moving with pulleys and like actually physically doing it. We didn't cheat that at all, that sequence. I find those kinds of sets, not the theatre itself, because that's actually quite easy, but those kind of sets like camps, and really hard. I mean, I've done more than my fair share of battlegrounds and like army camps and things, and they could go on eternally. Like you just could keep adding tents, and that's how it was with the Orphans of the Forest, because you've just got like so much depth around you. How do you ever end it? And you want to make it feel like it's substantial. I spent a lot of time in that forest. Ari wasn't keen, so there was something, I can't remember what it was, like ticks or something that could kill you or give you, like there was some reason. I remember it being quite stressful. But I spent a lot of time in there because I really love actually like painting things. And so I painted tents and I spent a lot of time. It was the kind of set that you could be a total amateur and like do like terrible artwork, and it worked. But yeah, so that was quite a tricky set in terms of how do you make it, well, where does it begin? Where does it end? It was a big set build. That actual theatre had quite a substantial footprint. It took quite a long time, actually.
And starting at the beginning of the scene, we see a lot of these proverb signs. And like you said, they're kind of hand painted. Can you give us a little bit of background on the creation of these signs? Like, was it you just up there writing, or was it your team? And
I think it was my assistant, actually, who did those. Yeah, she was great. So Maud.
Oh, cool.
She, I'm pretty sure she did those. And so we kept adding them because it felt like, so there were the proverbs that Ari particularly wanted. And then it became just throw in any kind of Broadway musical, like anything that sounds profound, like the first time. And then you just kind of go, oh, hold on, why do I know that? And so there were actually, I can't remember all of them, but we actually kept spotting them around because they made us laugh. Like I'm sure there would definitely be something from Les Miserables in there. Yeah, we were just kind of coming up with all these different things.
So this was such a stunning sequence just to take in the movie theater. There's so much detail when examining the stage play. Would you be able to dig more into the specifics of the season-changing trees, the swinging axes? You mentioned that they were practically done, but can you tell us more about that, how that was achieved?
Well, we had to work out how to show the seasons changing really quickly. And so then I came up with the idea of having the trees painted in the 3 different colors. So they just spin and then that with these little grasses that slide in and out. And I can't remember if they slip up, but they definitely are sliding in and out. And then adding snow and falling leaves. And so it was actually very, very simple because we just had a series of tracks that you could just slide. So we had all these guys on the side of the stage just sliding things in and out. But they rehearsed, like, I don't even know for how long. It took a really long time to get it to be right. And there were all these, like the minute there was something in a track, that one didn't slide, so it was all this kind of, it had to be quite precise. But it was all old school tricks. Like even the axe slide is, again, just on a track. Like it wasn't done in, with CG or anything. It was all just, and even I think the chain cutting, it was just like, that was a rig that our prop master worked out. So it was all very analog, which is nice. Because I think there's something great about feeling that for Beau, he sees the beginning of the play and then he travels into that world. So there had to be a continuum visually, like you were on a path. So the methodology then was intended to carry through into the hero Beau sequence.
That really came through, that difference in the tangible versus Beau's here. He's now clearly in the animated world, especially with that axe, the way that the performer pulls it off the track and there's just this ping.
Yeah.
And you can kind of just tell that in addition to sound design, you can just tell that was there.
Yeah.
And that really came through, that tangible feel. Yeah. That's great.
Good.
And then as we get deeper into this sequence, as we were just saying, Beau is placed directly in the fantasy of the play. Can you tell us about your collaboration with the Leon and Cosinia stop motion team and that complexity of mixing practical sets with animation?
Well, Hero Beau was something that was like this real beast, honestly. Like it was just this thing, like we already had a big movie to make for like not that much money and then not masses of time. And then on top of that, we had this quite unresolved piece that we knew was essential to the story. And how we were going to do it wasn't really that clear. Ari was really, really clear about how he wanted to tell the story. So in terms of camera, movement, the sense that it's like a continuous journey. We did quite a lot of like model making and like worked out, okay, so for example, how to do the jail. So the wall will swing and, or how to do all these elements happened relatively early because Ari was very clear about that. And then the difficulty was splitting off what are we physically building in the medium-sized studio that we have and what will be done in a workshop in Chile. Like, so very early on, I spoke to Joaquin and Cristobal about, we all got together and we all met each other, but it actually took quite a long time to settle into how we were really going to do it. And for me, my biggest area of involvement was conceptual, like in terms of what is the aesthetic? Like it was written originally as almost like a medieval knight's tale. And then we came to the conclusion that actually this version of a hero should be more, rural and sort of, this kind of capable man who's out able to, like cook, grow his own crops and everything and take a wife and procreate and do all these things. And, so I did lots of just, image referencing and tonal, like this is the kind of look, this sort of naivety is really interesting. And so I fed that to them and then they just basically responded because they couldn't be more brilliant. I mean, they just could not be more brilliant. And they would send things to me and Ari, can we get some feedback? And I'd just be there going, oh, well, I mean, it's brilliant. Like it's completely... It only became like, okay, logistically, how do we make that forest? How big is it? And then what they did was they designed and painted, like would hand draw these little pictures and send them to us. And then they would be blown up and our brilliant artist, Serge, would paint those. And I have them all around my house now. I've got one behind me.
Wow, that's so cool. So we also get a flashback to Mona telling Beau about his father's death and Beau's own doomed future, which once again I think really expertly balances comedy with horror. Did you work closely with cinematographer Pavel Porgozelski on decisions like the bedroom lantern design and how that would cast light on Mona's face?
Yeah, we did. Actually, that was my set decorator, Paul Ott, did a lot of work on that. That was made specifically and very, very carefully. And so there was a lot of conversation with Pavel and also Ari about that lamp. And then, as luck would have it, on the day it broke. So it's like, I feel like every time I do a hero prop, like some little crisis happens, and yeah, something happened with the motor, and I just remember losing time, just like, oh my god, not the lantern, because it had taken so long to get right. And then I don't know, something happened, and it was like a minor crisis, not a major crisis, but enough that people were like, well, the lantern broke, Fiona. So anyway, but we got it going again, and it was all good.
So we end the sequence with the arrival of Jeeves, and all this chaos ensues. And there's this mysterious object that gets a decent amount of screen time. It's this large black box with a rainbow hole in the wind-up arm. And this butterfly man grabs a gun from it. Is this a sort of wind machine for the play?
It actually was meant to be the whirring noise. The noise that kind of hypnotizes Beau. So that was the sound. It's kind of the whirring machine. And we did a lot of work trying to find like what was the shape and what was it, what should it look like. And then originally it was just from memory, just a black hole. And then Ari was like, it would be really good if it had a rainbow. So that's some of my handiwork, like hastily, here you go, here's and turn over, So that's what that was. But I think it is meant to be relatively mysterious, like what and why, who knows.
I was going to say, it evoked a lot of like David Lynch type vibes to me when I saw that.
Yeah.
And then looking back at the film as a whole, is there a sequence or a setup that you are particularly proud or fond of and really enjoyed working on with your team?
I mean, I'm a character person. Like, I love detail, and I loved the details in Beau's apartment. It was quite a hard set to do because we built that, and it had to have this kind of blankness to it, but also just not be like visually dead. So we did quite nice things with proportions, like trying to make it uncomfortable, like trying to create a space that had no natural position for anything, where you were never comfortable on the sofa and everything, like you would just always bump into something. That was our sort of intention. And then there was a huge amount of thought and conversation about what the damage would be after everyone's left. And that was really fun working on all of that stuff, because that we made like little teeth and put them into the frames of the door, and like we had hair, we had fingernails, like little, I mean, I know you never see them, but anyway, we took great pleasure in like scratch marks and like coming up with the idea that somebody had been pulled through the room and then held on with their teeth, and then they, stuff like that. We just kind of were going, and it was I just remember standing in that space with Ari and Pav and, just a bunch of Lars and a bunch of people working out what to do, where to put things, and what they would clock. And that was quite fun. But also doing the K-pop bedroom was really fun too. That was actually really fun. That whole house was fun because again, it's about the people, like finding the language of these people who aren't quite who they say they are. So we're art directing a house to tell you that they are Grace and Roger, if that makes sense. So all of that kind of layering of artifice was very, very interesting to work out the line, to walk.
Oh, that's so great. And I really do feel like your level of detail and the work that you and your team did is really clear and makes this film that much better.
Thank you.
It's been so amazing to talk with you, and we appreciate you joining to discuss Beau Is Afraid, and a huge congratulations to you and your team.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much, Fiona.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you you again to Fiona for that amazing discussion, and thank you to our listeners and fellow movie enthusiasts for reliving this scene with us. Do you have a favorite scene from Beau Is Afraid? You can email us at contact@scenecraftpodcast.com with any of your thoughts or comments, or follow us on Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok at Scenecraft Podcast for the latest updates on the show. You can also support the podcast by leaving us a review or star rating on your platform of choice. A very special thanks to Jordan Summerlad for our theme music. This has been Scenecraft, where we break down the craft behind our favorite scenes. See you all next time.